My friends, good afternoon. The Pittsburgh Steelers may have just received a major answer to one of the most talked about quarterback stories of the offseason, and it came in a way that almost nobody expected. After weeks of speculation, rumors, debates, and endless conversations across the football world, the NFL has officially informed teams that there will not be a supplemental draft in 2026. And with that decision, Brendan Sorsby's path to joining an NFL roster this season has effectively been shut down. This development immediately changes the landscape surrounding one of the most controversial quarterback situations in recent memory. For months, Sorsby had become a name that many fans, analysts, and even some NFL executives were monitoring closely. There was growing belief that the former quarterback could enter the league through the supplemental draft process, giving interested teams an opportunity to acquire him before the 2027 NFL draft. Instead, the NFL has decided not to hold the event at all. According to reports, the league informed teams that no supplemental draft will take place this year. While that might sound surprising to some fans, the reality is that the supplemental draft has always been a rare occurrence. The NFL is not obligated to hold one every year. Under the collective bargaining agreement, the league has the authority to determine whether a supplemental draft is appropriate during a given season. That detail is becoming extremely important now because Sorsby's camp is already pushing back against the decision. His attorney released a statement arguing that the move violates both the collective bargaining agreement and the law, signaling that they intend to challenge the NFL's decision. However, that legal battle appears incredibly difficult from the outside. The reason is simple. Sorsby is not currently an NFL player. He is not a member of the NFL Players Association, and the language within the agreement reportedly gives the league broad discretion regarding whether a supplemental draft is held. As a result, the NFL appears to have complete authority in this situation. What makes this story even more fascinating is everything that led up to this point. The entire saga surrounding Sorsby has been one of the strangest quarterback stories of the last several years. Reports surfaced involving gambling activity, including allegations that he placed thousands of bets, with some reportedly involving his own team and offense during his time in college football. Those accusations immediately triggered major concerns and created uncertainty about his football future. From there, the situation became increasingly complicated. Questions emerged regarding his NCAA eligibility. Legal battles followed. Discussions began about alternative routes into professional football. Then came the possibility of entering the NFL through a supplemental draft, which many believed could become his fastest path back onto the field. Now that possibility is gone. In practical terms, the NFL's decision essentially prevents Sorsby from entering the league this season. Instead of drafting him and then potentially determining disciplinary measures afterward, the league has effectively created a one-year waiting period. It gives NFL decision makers additional time to evaluate the entire situation, review all available information, and determine whether they are comfortable allowing him to enter the league in the future. That is a significant development because it means Sorsby will almost certainly not play NFL football in 2026. For Steelers fans, however, there is another important angle to consider. Despite all the speculation linking Pittsburgh to quarterback discussions this offseason, there was never overwhelming evidence that the Steelers were seriously preparing to pursue Sorsby. In fact, when you look at the current state of the quarterback room, the organization already appears focused on developing younger options that are already in the building. The Steelers recently invested in Drew Aller, a quarterback they clearly believe possesses long-term potential. They also continue to evaluate Will Howard, another young passer who has generated interest within the organization. Training camp will provide another opportunity to assess Howard's development and determine where he fits into the team's future plans. Because of those factors, many around the league believe Pittsburgh was unlikely to make an aggressive move for Sorsby, even if the supplemental draft had occurred. Still, the situation remained worth monitoring because quarterback conversations never truly disappear in Pittsburgh. Whenever a talented quarterback becomes available, fans naturally wonder whether the Steelers could get involved. That is especially true for a franchise that continues searching for its next long-term answer at the position. Now, though, the conversation surrounding Sorsby takes a completely different direction. The question is no longer whether a team will spend a draft pick to acquire him this summer. The question becomes whether he can find any realistic path back onto a football field before the 2027 NFL draft arrives. And that may end up being the biggest challenge of his entire career. With the NFL door now closed for this season, what do you think this decision means for Brendan Sorsby's future? And do you believe the Steelers were ever truly interested in bringing him to Pittsburgh in the first place? Looking ahead, the reality facing Brendan Sorsby is becoming increasingly difficult. Even if he eventually wins some portion of his legal fight, the football calendar is moving forward without him. Every week that passes is another week where quarterbacks across college football and the NFL continue developing, gaining experience, and improving their draft stock, while Sorsby remains on the outside looking in. At this point, the most realistic outcome appears to be preparing for the 2027 NFL Draft. That means the focus will likely shift away from courtrooms and league offices and toward quarterback development. If Sorsby wants to rebuild his reputation and convince NFL teams that he is worth investing in, he will need to spend the next year improving every aspect of his game. There are several paths available for that process. He could work with respected quarterback trainers who specialize in preparing prospects for the professional level. He could spend months refining his mechanics, improving footwork, studying NFL concepts, and demonstrating that he remains committed to becoming a professional quarterback despite everything that has happened. The physical tools have never been the biggest question. Many evaluators have acknowledged that Sorsby possesses intriguing traits. He has size, he has arm strength, he has the kind of physical profile that NFL scouts traditionally notice when evaluating quarterbacks. Those characteristics are part of the reason why his name generated so much attention when discussions about a potential supplemental draft began. But physical talent alone is no longer the story. The larger concern now revolves around trust, decision-making, and how NFL organizations view the controversy surrounding his career. Teams spend enormous resources evaluating quarterbacks because the position impacts every aspect of a franchise. Front offices want confidence not only in a player's talent, but also in their leadership, judgment, and ability to represent an organization. That is where the challenge becomes much greater. Even before the latest developments, there were already questions regarding where Sorsby might have been selected if he entered a traditional draft. Reports indicated that some NFL evaluators viewed him as a potential third-round prospect before the controversy emerged. While that represented solid value and legitimate NFL interest, it did not place him among the elite quarterback prospects expected to dominate future draft classes. Now add a year away from football, add the uncertainty surrounding his situation, add the negative publicity, add an incoming quarterback class that could be loaded with talent. Suddenly the road becomes significantly steeper. Several highly regarded quarterbacks are expected to headline the 2027 NFL Draft conversation. As more names officially enter the process, competition for draft positioning will only increase. Teams will have numerous options to evaluate, many of whom will be coming directly from successful college seasons without the baggage currently surrounding Sorsby's profile. That reality could dramatically affect where he is eventually selected. Instead of competing for early round consideration, he may find himself fighting simply to remain relevant in draft discussions. Every workout, every interview, every meeting with scouts will matter. For the Pittsburgh Steelers, however, this entire development reinforces something that already seemed to be happening behind the scenes. The organization appears committed to evaluating the young quarterbacks currently on the roster before making any major future decisions. Drew Aller remains one of the most important developmental players on the team. The Steelers clearly see potential worth investing in, and his growth over the next year could significantly influence the direction of the franchise. Meanwhile, Will Howard continues to have an opportunity to prove that he deserves a larger role within the organization. Both players now become even more important because the Steelers can focus entirely on their internal development plans instead of monitoring a complicated supplemental draft scenario. The broader quarterback picture for Pittsburgh remains fascinating. Aaron Rodgers is expected to serve as the veteran presence, but there continues to be widespread anticipation that retirement could eventually become part of the conversation. If that happens, Pittsburgh will once again find itself evaluating every possible option at the position. That evaluation could include Aller, it could include Howard, it could include a highly drafted rookie quarterback in the future. Everything remains on the table. What seems far less likely now is the possibility of Brendan Sorsby becoming part of those plans. Given the circumstances, the Steelers may prefer a cleaner path toward identifying their next franchise quarterback. Organizations searching for a long-term leader often prioritize stability, reliability, and a developmental timeline that allows a player to contribute relatively quickly. After everything that has unfolded this offseason, it is difficult to see Sorsby matching that profile for Pittsburgh. Instead, the Steelers appear positioned to continue building around the quarterbacks they already have while keeping an eye on future draft opportunities. And that may ultimately be the biggest takeaway from this entire story. A situation that once generated speculation, debate, and endless questions about potential NFL destinations has now reached a turning point. The supplemental draft will not happen. Sorsby's immediate NFL hopes are on hold. Pittsburgh's quarterback plans remain focused elsewhere. Now all eyes turn toward training camp, the development of the Steelers' young quarterbacks, and the long-term future of the position in Pittsburgh. Another aspect that deserves attention is how this decision affects the perception of risk around quarterback investments across the league. Every NFL front office is constantly weighing talent against uncertainty, and the Sorsby situation is a reminder of how quickly a promising prospect's trajectory can change. Not long ago, the conversation surrounding him was centered on potential. Teams were evaluating his arm talent, physical tools, and developmental upside. There were discussions about where he might fit, what type of offensive system could maximize his strengths, and whether a franchise would be willing to spend future draft capital to acquire him through the supplemental draft process. Now, those conversations have largely disappeared. Instead, NFL teams can afford to wait. There is no urgency anymore. No front office has to make a decision this summer. No general manager needs to gamble on projecting his future while simultaneously dealing with the uncertainty surrounding his situation. The league's decision has effectively moved the timeline back by an entire year. That benefits NFL teams far more than it benefits Sorsby. Over the next several months, organizations will continue gathering information. Scouts will monitor how he handles adversity. Executives will watch whether he remains committed to football. Coaches will want to see if he continues developing despite not having meaningful game action available. Those factors could become just as important as any throw he eventually makes at a workout or pro day. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh's attention remains focused on preparing for the 2026 season. For the Steelers, the biggest objective is no longer discussing hypothetical quarterback additions. The focus is on developing the players currently in the building and determining whether any of them can emerge as part of the franchise's long-term solution. That puts extra attention on Drew Aller's development throughout the year. Every practice rep, every meeting room session, and every opportunity to learn from veteran leadership becomes valuable. The organization wants answers about what it has in its young quarterbacks, and the only way to get those answers is through patience and development. Will Howard also enters an important stage of his career. Training camp and preseason opportunities